At 40, Nico Rosberg finally reveals the 5 drivers he hated most. You win a world championship. Then you walk away the very next day. No one does that. No one. Nico Rosberg spent 25 years chasing a dream that his father Kiki had already lived. He sacrificed friendships, burned bridges, and destroyed the one relationship that defined his entire career. One world title, one retirement, and a lifetime of grudges he never fully buried. Behind the champagne and the perfect smile were 5 drivers who pushed Rosberg to his absolute breaking point. Men who disrespected him on track, who manipulated the politics off it, who made him question whether the sport he loved was even worth fighting for. At 40 years old, Rosberg is finally done staying quiet. 5 drivers, 5 rivalries that never healed. The truth starts now. Nico Rosberg was born on June 27, 1985 in Wiesbaden, Germany. But he did not grow up like a typical German kid. His father, Keke Rosberg, was a Formula One world champion. So Nico grew up in Monaco, surrounded by wealth, speed, and expectation. The pressure was never spoken. It was inherited. He entered Formula One in 2006 with Williams. Talented but overlooked. Promising but never feared. Then came 2010. Mercedes signed him, and everything changed. For 6 years, Rosberg fought inside the most dominant team in F1 history. Not against the field, against his own teammate. A man he had called his best friend since childhood. That internal war cost him more than race victories. It cost him his peace. In 2016, Rosberg finally won the World Championship. 5 days later, he retired. The grudges, however, never left with him. Number 5. Sebastian Vettel. 4 World Championships. A legacy built on dominance, precision, and an ego that filled every room he entered. For Nico Rosberg, Vettel was never just a competitor on track. He was a constant reminder that success came easier to some than others. And that infuriated him. Their battles began in the mid-2000s when both were climbing through the junior ranks. Even then, Vettel carried himself like someone who already knew the ending, confident in a way that felt less like belief and more like arrogance. Rosberg noticed it early and never forgot it. On track, Vettel was ruthless. At the 2013 Malaysian Grand Prix, Vettel ignored direct team orders and overtook his own teammate Mark Webber. Rosberg watched from his cockpit and felt something shift. This was a man who played by his own rules, who smiled for the cameras and then did exactly what he wanted the moment no one could stop him. Off the track, their relationship was polite on the surface and poisonous underneath. Vettel's 4 consecutive championships between 2010 and 2013 pushed Rosberg further from the spotlight every single season. Every Vettel trophy felt like proof that Rosberg was not yet where he needed to be. For a driver who had spent his entire career fighting to step out of enormous shadows, Sebastian Vettel simply created another one. Number 4. Kimi Raikkonen, the Iceman. A man who treated every press conference like a punishment and every interview like an invasion of privacy. For most of the paddock, Raikkonen's coldness was entertaining. For Nico Rosberg, it was something far more personal, because Kimi Raikkonen never once acknowledged that Rosberg deserved to be taken seriously, and that silence cut deeper than any insult ever could. On track, Raikkonen was unpredictable in the worst possible way. At the 2014 Belgian Grand Prix, Raikkonen made contact with Rosberg under braking, damaging his front wing and costing him critical championship points. No apology, no explanation. Kimi simply drove back to the pits like nothing had happened. That indifference was the part Rosberg could never accept. At least aggression meant someone respected you enough to fight. Raikkonen's dismissiveness suggested Rosberg was not even worth the effort. Off the track, their relationship was essentially non-existent. Raikkonen spoke to almost no one willingly, but the drivers he did acknowledge formed a very specific circle. Our Rosberg was never in it. Team meetings, driver briefings, paddock gatherings. Kimi looked through Rosberg like he was invisible. For a man who had worked his entire life to be seen, to be respected, to be feared inside Formula One, being ignored completely by a world champion was an insult no trophy could fix. Kimi Raikkonen did not hate Rosberg. He simply never noticed him, and that was worse. Number 3. Pastor Maldonado, the most dangerous man on any grid he ever joined. Not dangerous because of talent, dangerous because of pure, uncontrollable unpredictability. For Nico Rosberg, Maldonado was not a rival. He was a threat, a moving hazard wrapped in a racing suit who could end your championship with one careless move and then smile like nothing happened. Their tension began early. Maldonado drove with zero awareness of the drivers around him. He braked late when he should not. He turned in early when space clearly existed. He made contact so frequently that the paddock stopped being surprised and started keeping count. Rosberg had fought too hard, sacrificed too much, and waited too long to have his race destroyed by someone who had no business being on the same circuit. At the 2012 European Grand Prix in Valencia, Maldonado collected Rosberg in a completely avoidable incident. Rosberg climbed from the car and said nothing publicly. But privately, the frustration had reached a level that went far beyond racing. This was not competition. This was chaos wearing a helmet. Off the track, Maldonado's presence in Formula One felt like a daily insult to every driver who had earned their seat through pure merit. Rosberg had worked since childhood to reach this level. Maldonado arrived with backing and left with wreckage. For a perfectionist like Nico Rosberg, that combination was completely unforgivable. Number 2. Romain Grosjean, a driver who possessed genuine talent and somehow managed to weaponize it against everyone around him. For Nico Rosberg, Grosjean represented something uniquely maddening, a competitor fast enough to be taken seriously, but reckless enough to make every race feel like a gamble. And Rosberg was not a man who gambled with his career. At the 2012 Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, Grosjean triggered one of the most notorious first-lap incidents in modern Formula One history. He launched over the back of another car, collected multiple drivers, and ended races before the first corner was even properly negotiated. Rosberg escaped that particular disaster, but the message was received loud and clear. Grosjean was a problem that no amount of talent could excuse. Their battles continued throughout the 2012 and 2013 seasons. Every time Rosberg found himself wheel to wheel with the Frenchman, the risk calculation changed completely. Normal drivers respected boundaries. Grosjean treated boundaries like suggestions. Off the track, Grosjean's reputation inside the drivers' briefings was equally exhausting. He argued decisions. He deflected blame. He presented himself as a misunderstood artist rather than a repeat offender with a dangerously consistent pattern. For Rosberg, who approached Formula One with military precision and absolute professionalism, Grosjean's chaos was not just frustrating, but it was a personal insult to everything Rosberg believed a racing driver should represent. Number 1. Lewis Hamilton. There was only one driver who truly consumed Nico Rosberg completely. Not because of dirty racing, not because of cheap moves or paddock politics, but because Lewis Hamilton was simply, undeniably, infuriatingly better. And Rosberg knew it. They had been friends since karting at 13 years old. They grew up together, laughed together, and dreamed of Formula One together. Then Mercedes put them in the same garage and turned the friendship into a war neither man could walk away from. At the 2014 Belgian Grand Prix, Hamilton made contact with Rosberg under racing conditions, puncturing his tire and ending his race. Rosberg was furious, not just about the incident, about what it represented. Hamilton was willing to risk everything, including their friendship, to win. Rosberg was not sure he could match that coldness. That realization haunted him for 2 full seasons. At Monaco in 2014, Rosberg was accused of deliberately ruining his own qualifying lap to prevent Hamilton from getting a clean run. The paddock erupted. Hamilton's anger was visible and raw. The friendship was finished. What remained was pure warfare. Off the track, Hamilton's natural charisma, his fashion, his music, his global celebrity made Rosberg's disciplined professionalism look colorless by comparison. Rosberg won the 2016 championship by 23 points, the narrowest possible margin. Then he retired immediately. Because he knew the truth. He had climbed the mountain once. Hamilton would keep climbing forever. Nico Rosberg's story was never just about speed. It was about survival, about carrying the weight of a famous name, fighting inside the most dominant team in Formula One history, and refusing to break when everything around him was designed to make him fail. Sebastian Vettel overshadowed him. Kimi Raikkonen ignored him. Pastor Maldonado endangered him. Romain Grosjean frustrated him. And Lewis Hamilton nearly destroyed him completely. But Rosberg did not just survive. He won. One championship, one perfect season, one moment that justified every sacrifice, every grudge, every sleepless night. At 40 years old, Rosberg no longer needs to protect anyone's feelings. These 5 drivers did not just test him on track. They defined exactly who Nico Rosberg had to become to beat them. Subscribe for more untold Formula One stories.